In this video, we're going to be looking at calculations you would perform in operating a small business. Specifically, we're going to be concentrating on profit, loss, and the break-even point of a business. So we're going to be looking at calculating annual and average monthly revenue and expenses for a business and determining whether a business has experienced a profit, loss, or break-even point. And then we're also going to look at identifying ways in which a business can improve its profitability. So the outcomes we're going to cover are determining the profit, loss, and break-even point for a small business, and explaining factors such as seasonal variations and hours of operation that might impact the profitability of a small business. So here is our first example. Amy opened an ice cream cart in Cavendish, PEI 3 years ago. The table and graph shows last year's revenue and expenses before taxes. So you can see the graph. The red shows her expenses and the blue shows her revenue. And we have a table that gives us the exact same numbers. You'll notice that in January, February, November, and December, there are no revenue and no expenses. So this means that likely she didn't have her cart open during this time. So we're going to list some expenses for Amy's ice cream, and we're going to classify each expense as fixed or variable. Here are some that we were able to come up with. Fixed expenses include renting the ice cream cart. Every month that she owns the cart, she uses the cart, she's going to have to pay rent on it, and that's a regular occurrence. And she's also going to have to pay insurance on her cart regularly. Variable expenses include things such as ice cream and cones. That depends on the number of ice cream and cones that she sells. Cups and napkins, once again, entirely dependent on the number that she sells. The utility, so the amount of energy she consumes in her business, again, is totally dependent on the amount of ice cream she'll sell. And the taxes that she'll have to pay are directly related to her sales. So again, that is entirely dependent on sales. So they are all considered variable expenses. They change from month to month. The fixed expenses are the same every month. Calculate the average monthly expenses and revenue for the year. We're going to start with the expenses. And to get average monthly expenses, we're going to add together all of our monthly expenses and then divide by the number of months in the year. And of course, there are 12 months in any year. You're going to notice in the calculations, I didn't include those months where there was zero revenue, because if I add 0 to whatever I get here, it's going to keep the same numbers. It's not going to change. So rather than show those 4 months with 0 expenses, I just left them out. So we take all of our expenses from month to month and add them together. And we get $30,250 is the total expenses that she experienced for the year. Divide that by 12, and that worked out to an average of $2,520.83 every month in expenses. We're going to do the same thing now with the revenue. To get the average monthly revenue, we're going to add together the total revenue and divide by the number of months. And once again, I left out those months where there was 0 revenue. So I add together all of the revenue that she received, and then I divide that by 12. The total revenue she received for the year is $43,600. Divide that by 12, works out to an average monthly revenue of $3,633.33. So during which month did Amy's ice cream have the highest revenue? And in which month or months did she have the lowest revenue? And why do you think this was the case? If we go back to the original slide, we can see that she had the highest revenue in both months, the months of July and August. She had $8,500 each in July and August. And this is likely due to the fact that she had, in July and August, she had the hottest months of the year, and ice cream would be most popular during the hottest part of the year. And once again, Her lowest revenue was during the months of November, December, January, and February, with $0 each of these months. So in other words, no revenue at all in those months. And this is likely due to the fact that she had closed up her cart for the winter, because ice cream isn't as popular in wintertime. Okay, our next example. Laura opened her own coffee shop a few years ago. The revenue and expenses for last year are shown in the table to the right and graph below. So once again, we see a similar table where in blue we see the revenue and in red we see the expenses. And this seems to be good for Laura in that most of the months the blue is above the red. So we can see in our table the monthly revenue and expenses as well. So our first question, during which month did Laura's Cafe show a loss? Calculate the net income for that month. So if you look at this, you can see that she achieved the lowest, or she achieved a loss in January because her revenue was only $7,600, but her expenses were $8,200. So she actually paid out more in the month of January than she took in. So when revenue is only $7,600 and expenses are $8,200, she achieved a loss. Not much of an achievement. So net income for the month can be found by subtracting expenses from revenue. So our net is $7,600 in revenue subtracted by the $8,200 in expenses for a total net income of minus $600. In other words, the shop lost $600 in January. I spelled January wrong. Apologies for that. During which month did Laura's Cafe achieve a break-even point? How do you know? Well, a break-even point occurs when the revenue and expenses are exactly the same. And if we look at our table, this occurred in the month of April. We can see that her revenue was $13,250 in April, and her expenses were also $13,250. So the break-even point is when the revenue and expenses are equal. This occurs in the month of April when both revenue and expenses are $13,250. Did Laura's Cafe show an overall profit or loss for the year? And by how much? To determine whether or not there was a profit, we must calculate both the annual revenue and the annual expenses. So I'm going to start by calculating the revenue. I add up all the revenue that she received for every month, giving us a total value of $188,465. And next I'm going to do the same for my expenses. I'm going to add up all of my expenses for the year. And this gives a value of $139,550. So to calculate the net income for the year, we take the annual revenue and subtract from it the annual expenses. $188,465 minus $139,550 gives a total net income of $48,915. So the cafe showed an overall profit of $48,915 for the year. Okay, in January, Laura spent $3,875 on wages. What percent of January's expenses does this represent? Well, we know that she earned $8,200, or she spent $8,200 in total in the month of January. If $30,875 was spent on wages out of the $8,200, we divide 3,875 by 8,200. Multiply that by 100, and we're in percentage units. It gives us a total amount of 47%. So almost half of all of her expenses went towards wages in the month of January. Laura wants to make more money. What are some changes she could make to improve the profitability of her cafe? List advantages and disadvantages of the changes you suggest. Well, here are some that we've managed to come up with. First, we're going to look at ways to improve revenue, increase revenue. First, if we increase prices, the advantage to increasing prices is that Laura would make more money on each sale. But a disadvantage is that if she raises prices, people may not be willing to pay more, so Laura might lose business. The next option is to stay open longer. An advantage to that would be that the cafe would be able to serve more customers in a day if they're open more hours. A problem with that, though, is that if the cafe is not busy, Laura could lose money because she's still paying wages to her employees, and she still has to pay for utilities while the cafe is open. The longer it's open, the more the utilities are going to be, because the machines are going to be running longer, and the lights will be on, the heat will be on, and things of that nature. Next, to increase revenue, she can try running a promotion to get more people into the cafe. This might work in that the cafe might gain more business when people see the promotion, and these people might come back after the promotion is over. The hope is that when you bring in new customers, that you can keep those new customers. It will cost money to run the promotion, though, which is a disadvantage, and there is no guarantee that it will attract more customers. Also, she can try advertising to try to get more people into the cafe. And once again, through advertising, she might be able to gain more business. By getting her name out there, or the cafe's name out there, it might drum up additional business. The problem with it is, again, that it will cost money to run. And once again, there's not a guarantee that more people will show up just because they've heard the ads. So it's not a guarantee that she'll make more money. And lastly, she can try opening up a second cafe, which could work in that if she has 2 locations, that means that she has 2 places for people to travel to, and this maybe opens up additional neighborhoods in which she could get revenue. The problem is that it costs a lot of money up front to open a second location. Open any business, you have a lot of upfront costs that you have to bear in mind. And as things become more viable, as they are in the marketplace for longer, they will hopefully recover a lot of those upfront costs. But the biggest expense you might have in starting up a small business is your upfront costs. So another way you can try to improve your profitability is to decrease expenses. And one thing you could try to do is find a less expensive source for your coffee, tea, and food. And as a result of that, Laura could pay less for her products but charge the same amount, meaning that on every cup of coffee she sells, or a cup of tea, or muffin, or whatever it is she's selling in her store, she would have a higher margin. She would earn more money per sale. The problem with it is if she's buying cheaper products, then they might be lower quality or of a different quality, and she may lose some of her customers due to the different quality of her products. And she can also try to decrease expenses by having fewer employees, which means that if she has fewer employees, she wouldn't have to pay as much in wages. The problem with that is if with too few employees, your customer service may suffer because people just don't have the ability to handle the same amount of of work as one or two extra bodies in the shop might be able to. And if customers get upset with that, Laura could lose business. So in summary for this particular lesson, we talked about profits, losses, and the break-even point. Well, losses occur whenever expenses are higher than revenues. So any month in which you actually spend more than you make, that's where a loss would occur. Your break-even point is when the revenues and expenses are exactly the same. So when you have a net income for the month of 0, your expenses and your revenue are identical. And profits will occur whenever your revenues are greater than expenses. And for any business to remain viable, in other words, for any business to be able to stay open, it's going to need to be able to make a profit at some point. It's going to have to start doing that. Oftentimes, that may take a year or two for a business to regularly be able to make a profit, but it is important that a business makes a profit if it's going to want to stay open.